Yorkshire, a region of cosmopolitan and historic cities, beautiful coastal towns and the Dales, where the local folk are so proud they call it God's own country. But let's be honest, some of it is like the devil's own arsehole. After researching the places in Yorkshire that get the most bad press online, I set off to find out and rank off the worst 20 places in Yorkshire. This is part 1, places 20 to 11. Number 20, Scarborough, the premier seaside resort in Yorkshire. The Scarborough urban area is home to around 110,000 people and attracts a whopping 23 million visitors per year. Like many seaside towns though, it has a few problems, such as some of the highest rates of antisocial behaviour and homelessness in North Yorkshire and the most infamous hotel in all of Britain, but more on that shortly. I arrived in Scarborough on a rather gloomy Friday afternoon and went off to check out the town centre. It is a little bit on the rundown side, but not excessively, and the grand old buildings are still there, albeit in varying states of disrepair. This town is over 1,000 years old, founded by the Vikings, and in medieval times smugglers built an elaborate network of tunnels to bring in their contraband, mostly tea, gin, tobacco, brandy. You know, a bit like that dodgy bloke in a pub who goes to Tenerife every couple of weeks. So yes, the old town of Scarborough, certainly has a lot of heritage and character. The streets were pretty dead, however, for a Friday afternoon stroke evening, but the weather was pretty bad, so I'll give Scarborough a pass on that one. Some people might even call it paradise, up here overlooking the bay by the St Mary's Church. Scarborough Castle was closed, but I could still enjoy the view from the walls to the castle and to the North Bay and unfortunately what some knobhead had written on the wall here. I headed through some residential areas next and I couldn't quite believe the grammar on this sign. I mean, I don't mean to be a grammar Nazi or anything, but that is a shocker. Apparently in this theatre, young men can do whatever they feel. This here is the Over the Moon shop. Probably the creepiest shop, not just in Scarborough, but probably all of Yorkshire. After nightmares about mutant foxes and dolls, I woke up to sunshine the following day. A view of the bay that was so stunning, Queen Victoria herself would be proud. Speaking of old Vicky, the Victorian funicular here is the oldest in all of Britain. I should just say this is on double speed, by the way, it doesn't actually go that fast. A little way south of the town centre then, and it can't be denied that Scarborough has some excellent beaches, and being a Saturday morning, a sunny Saturday morning, there are hardly any crowds. The Italian and Rose Gardens were very picturesque and also very quiet, apart from this, the first homeless person that I'd seen in Scarborough up to this point. The Grand Hotel is notorious for bad reviews. It has a TripAdvisor rating of 2.4 out of 5. The very most recent review at the time of recording reads, "Currently here, first time and definitely last time. Don't think I will sleep under the duvet tonight in case there's bed bugs. We have been given a room with no window, which isn't a problem, but the room is mouldy paint peeling off the walls and ceiling, not to mention the room isn't the cleanest. Squished bug on ceiling above the bed. I'm hoping that doesn't land in my mouth tonight when I'm snoring. Not to mention took a good 40 minutes queuing to check in." Unquote. That makes me itch just thinking about it. You could see why this was called the Grand Hotel. It was once the largest hotel in Europe. It's owned by the Britannia Hotel Group, who seem to do a great job of turning nice hotels into bad ones. Back down onto the seafront then, and you have your usual attractions like this Big Wheel, for example. And there's this fella giving out advice as well.
Wow, I see generosity spilling out from you very soon. You're gonna, in fact, that guy behind you, I think you should give him $10 right now. Why not? Why not help people? Just like Denmark gave me Greenland, you can give other people money. Why not? While you're at it, give me some more money, please. Thank you. We call that the art of the deal. God bless.
On a completely unrelated note, by the way, you can find my PayPal details in my profile page. A replica of the Spanish boat Nau Victoria, the first boat to circumnavigate the world, was on display in the harbour, as were speedboats and even pirate boats. Around to the North Bay there was an abandoned hotel, but this certainly seemed to be the exception rather than the rule. And even further north from there, there's Peasholm Park and Peasholm Island, complete with a pagoda, and there's also a vintage railway there. I was surprised to see this poster requesting vigilance against migrant boats, given Scarborough is about 350 miles from Calais compared to Dover at 21 miles, but doesn't matter, big man's on the lookout for them anyway. And that's about it. Scarborough's a nice place. On to South Yorkshire now. Number 19, Barnsley. I have to confess, I feared the worst of my trip to Barnsley. I've been in South Yorkshire for a while by this point, and as you'll see later in the series, some places were really not enjoyable places to be. Plus, the weather forecast was terrible. So, imagine my surprise when I found Barnsley to be a really nice town. With a population of 72,000 or so in the town and 250,000 in the borough, Barnsley, like other towns in the area, was a mining town. Unlike many other mining towns, however, it's bounced back from post-industrial decline. Barnsley did have a small helping hand in its location, being that it's next to the M1, pretty much in the middle of the country and close to Sheffield, Wakefield, Leeds and Doncaster. But it's worked hard to regenerate the town centre, and the people of Barnsley haven't let the town suffer the same fate as so many others. Bravo, Barnsley. In fact, they're so proud, they've got a statue here dedicated to the workers of the town. The Alhambra shopping centre in the centre of town is clean and modern, and it's very busy, despite this being a weekday and terrible weather. The market was thriving as well, and they had some proper Yorkshire grub on display at the butcher's. Here we've got some ox tongue, and then we've got some ox liver and dog bits, which I hope are bits for a dog, not bits of dog. The iconic movie Kes was set here in Barnsley. This statue remembers the author Barry Hines, who wrote the novel that later became the movie. This unusual sculpture of a cat is, well, it's unusual. I decided to head out of town after that to see if I could find a more sort of residential area where the people live, past the patriotic pub. It was a little bit scruffy around here, like dog poo and litter. And then the Opot pub, the Outpost pub. This area looks relatively densely populated, but despite one rogue shopping trolley, it was practically litter free, which just goes to show that Barnsley residents are proud of where they live, so bravo once again to Barnsley. And the parks are the same, they're immaculate. The local council seem to have done a pretty good job with Barnsley, but the potholes in the roads weren't great, and there are still, the scruffier areas here and there. So Barnsley, whilst doing much better than many of its neighbours, it still obviously isn't a utopia. You've got a few buildings like this, but it does have something very special going for it. A Dot Cotton laundrette themed karaoke bar. Genius. Now, I've never been on a night out in Barnsley. In fact, this is the first time I'd ever been here, but it looks like a good night out, so maybe someone can let me know in the comments. From walking around and what I could see, it seemed that Peel Street was the most run-down street in Barnsley. The home of house has moved out. The locals seem to prefer the more revolutionary Che Bar. That and Coco's bringing a bit of Latin flair to the town. Maybe that's why the Barnsley FC supporters sing, "It's just like watching Brazil." The retail park at the end of Peel Street sells the usual sort of junk food. Jock's Supper Hut no longer serves any food, sadly, despite previously possessing a privileged position close to the town hall. A town hall criticised by George Orwell when he came through Barnsley in 1938, stating it was too lavish and the money could have been better spent on housing the folk of Barnsley. Barnsley has a low unemployment rate and a lower than average crime rate for South Yorkshire, which could go some way to explaining why Capone's is out of business. The poem here, another example of Barnsley folks' pride. This is the Victorian arcade with potting sheds and tea rooms, coffee shops and some vintage clothing for the lads. Barnsley is a place that's a genuine pleasure to visit, apart from one thing. The forecast rain had arrived and the heavens had opened. I'd wanted to visit a couple more places, including Barnsley Football Club Stadium at Oakwell, but it just wasn't the weather for it. I'll say it for a third time. Bravo Barnsley, it's a nice town. Number 18, Hull. The rat-infested Hull. The city had rats everywhere when I visited, but more on that later. So to give it its correct name, it's not Hollywood, it's Kingston upon Hull, or as locals call it, simply Hull. In the East Riding of Yorkshire, Hull has a population of around 440,000 in its built-up area, and it's the fourth largest place in Yorkshire. Hull is known as the maritime city of Yorkshire, and like many port cities around the world, it has had a bit of a reputation for being a bit on the rough side. The area around the train station certainly has that feel about it. It's hard to know whether the shutters on these shops went down at midday on the day I arrived, or they went down 3 years ago, who knows. Strangely enough, the walk from the station to the centre is pretty much the low light inside the city centre, and from there it gets better. The Connects In live events venue was a bit strange, very modern, but standing underneath it felt like it was going to fall down on you. Hull is famous for its white phone boxes, but I hadn't seen them this colour before. And this is what I love about the north. Look at the prices of these pastries. Who ate all the pies? Who ate all the pies? At that price it would be me. The local shopping arcade was very LGBTQI plus friendly. And the centrepiece of Hull is the Queen Victoria Square. We'll come back here a bit later on. This is actually the second time we're seeing a Queen Victoria statue, and in case you're wondering, all over the UK there's over 175 statues of Queen Vicky, and there's quite a few in India, Australia, Canada, South Africa and so on. Back in 2017, a lot of Hull got revamped when it was the capital of culture in the UK, and there's nowhere better to visit in Hull than the Old Town. This is the food court inside the market. It serves some of the best food you can find this side of the Pennines. But while it was all nice and dandy inside the food court, it was a vile day outside. I had considered going to visit a deep aquarium until I found out that it cost 23 quid. Rain doesn't usually bother me, but when you're filming, it could make the most beautiful city look depressing. So I called it a day for now. Walking around Hull streets just outside the city centre, there's a huge amount of both wasteland and colossal buildings from all different time periods. This red brick building here was a Chinese supermarket. A pretty good one at that. The new theatre was set amongst these beautiful period buildings with floral displays. So this part of Hull is a far cry really from outsiders' perception of the city, which, let's be honest, it's not particularly flattering. Usually this perception comes from people who've never actually been here, but the residents of Hull are probably better off letting people think that, because before you know it, some folk will be priced out of London and they'll be buying up all these properties, and then your pastries have doubled up in price, and instead of a pot of tea you'll only get gluten-free skinny lattes with almond milk. Hull uses white phone boxes instead of the traditional red. This is because the council ran the phone network rather than Royal Mail like everywhere else in the country. This large column here is dedicated to William Wilberforce, the ex-Hull MP who was instrumental in bringing about the end of slavery. Yes, this is Queen Victoria Square again, just to show you how much nicer it looks in the sun. The water here at Prince's Quay is dyed deep blue, but the fish don't seem to mind. In the old town, this is Hull Cathedral, and there's tons of pubs, most of them centuries old. It's great for a pub crawl. I think you're getting the idea now, folks. Hull is a nice place to visit, particularly in the old town, and particularly if you're lucky enough to get a sunny day. A lot of money has been invested in it, and that's exemplified by the modern shopping centre. But of course there is some urban decay in the city centre. The biggest part of urban decay will come shortly though, but I just want to show you some huge buildings here, and this nightclub, Circus, advertising VK for £1.50 and Stella for £2. This closed in 2007 and has been abandoned ever since. This is the MKM Stadium, shared by Hull City Football Club, who play in the Championship, the second tier of English football, and Hull FC Rugby League team. Hull Kingston Rovers play in a different part of the city. They're also a rugby league team, and they're currently leading the English League. The roughest parts of Hull are said to be Branksome and Orchard Park. Unfortunately, they're both miles from the centre, and as I didn't have any wheels or that much time, I went to visit Boothbury Estate instead, where, according to articles online, antisocial behaviour is rife amongst youngsters who set stolen mopeds alight, break into people's homes and throw stones at passing cars. It looked kind of okay on my daytime visit, although I was slightly concerned about the artwork here, especially the nose on this unicorn. The play park in the Gower Road Park had been fenced off, presumably to stop the aforementioned vandals burning it to the ground. Sadly, this tree couldn't have been fenced off. And it looks like they already got to the slide before the fencing went up. There's really nothing to do in this area. The community centre here is closed down. The park, as you just saw, was fenced off, and there's just a couple of convenience stores nearby. There's a lot of wasteland in Hull, possibly partly because it was bombed incessantly during World War II. This area is called Gypsyville. Some of you might recognise the name Ronnie Pickering, the hardest man on the internet. He comes from Hull and has a road, a row of houses, and a park named after him. What a legend. If you've seen the video online, you'll see the irony of Pickering Park being against nuisance motorbikes. The other side of Hessel Road is tightly knit terraced houses with some street art to brighten the place up. Hessel Road itself has a reputation for being a bit of a rundown area, and it sure looked like it going by this row of shops. But at the same time, it looked like a neighbourhood with plenty of character and characters, and still remembers its fishing heritage. Speaking of fishing heritage, are you ready for some real urban decay? On the banks of the River Humber lies Lord Line. The Lord Line buildings, opened in 1949, were the beating heart of the fishing industry in Hull. The site was closed way back in 1975, that's 50 years prior to the time of recording, and it's owned by the local council. At this point, I'd just like to say the Absolute Ranker does not recommend visiting these places. They can be dangerous, and if you absolutely must go, take proper footwear and don't go on your own. By 1990, this site had been completely derelict. I first visited in 2021 and found a bunch of old accounting books in the larger building. I couldn't find them this time though. There's been loads of fires, vandalism, and as you can see, tons of graffiti in the place. At one point in time, at least 1 in 5 people in Hull worked in the fishing industry, but due to unsustainable fishing practices and the cod wars, amongst other things, the industry collapsed. Numerous companies have tried to buy the buildings, mostly wanting to demolish them and build apartments, but the council have refused. As for the future, who knows what will happen, but I can't see these buildings standing for another 50 years. As a whole, Hull has reinvented itself completely down the years, but outsiders, as I said before, still view it as some kind of rough port city. Well, the cat's out of the bag now, folks. Hull's well worth a visit. And if you want to see these rats, you'll need to get there before the 31st of August 2025, so you'll need to be quick. Number 16, Sheffield. My first time in Sheffield, and I was looking forward to seeing what it was all about. Exiting from the station, I was very impressed at how modern the city was, although I never found out what this fish was all about. Sheffield is a city famous for the steel industry, the Full Monty, Sean Bean, Jarvis Cocker, Prince Nassim Ahmed, Jessica Ennis Hill, Michael Palin, the Arctic Monkeys, the list goes on. It's now a thriving student city with most of these modern buildings being part of the university. But was this a shiny veneer on the post-industrial steel city? I was in town for a few days to find out. And I'd just like to point out here that this day that I arrived, it was the hottest day of the year up to that point. So it may have skewed my view a little bit, but the city was bustling. I like the mix of the old and the new buildings, and the trams add a bit of atmosphere. If you've seen The Full Monty, which was released in the mid-90s, you'll know the backdrop of the movie was a group of men who couldn't find work in a post-industrial Sheffield. It painted a pretty bleak picture of the city. Well, I'm pleased to say that Sheffield is in the midst of a transformation, and while it's not all hunky-dory, there are some rough areas in the centre and even more outside of it, which we'll get into later on. The city has diversified its economy, attracted some very capable students to its university, which consistently ranks among the top 100 worldwide, and it has a busy arts and music scene. As you can see, there are tons of derelict or unoccupied buildings, but at least it does feel like they're going to be filled at some point, unlike, say, for example, Lord Line in Hull. Sheffield is basically in the middle of the country. You could say it's the Northern Midlands or the southernmost part of the north, and it's roughly in between the east and the west of England. The M1 is close by, and it's only 2 hours to London by train. All these buildings here look like a property developer's wet dream. These are Victoria Quays, no doubt named after Queen Victoria. Yes, her again. And there's 3 theatres in Sheffield. This most famous is the Crucible Theatre, where the World Snooker Championship takes place. The Winter Gardens are free to enter and well worth checking out. Probably my favourite place in the city was the Peace Gardens and the Town Hall here. The city plays host to 2 professional football teams, both of whom play in the second tier of English football. Sheffield United just missed out on promotion to the Premier League in 2025, losing the playoff final to Sunderland. They play at Bramwell Lane, just walking distance from the centre. Sheffield United have been champions of England once in 1898 and have won the FA Cup 4 times, although most recently it was in 1925. Their rivals, Sheffield Wednesday, play their home games at Hillsborough, a few miles out of the centre. They have the larger of the 2 stadiums and the more illustrious history. being the second oldest professional football club in England and have won the league 4 times, most recently in 1930, and the FA Cup 3 times, most recently in 1935. Wednesday are currently going through some serious financial issues, with fans boycotting games as of August 2025, the time of recording. The oldest football team in the world, Sheffield FC, were formed in 1857. I didn't get time to go to their ground, it's miles out of the city centre, but here's a mural of them. The next day it was cloudy and I wanted to check out Kelham Island, a former industrial area, but was thwarted by a pride event taking place. Undeterred, I went off to find the grittier side of Sheffield. It didn't take long. Discarded sofas and buildings falling to bits, just around the corner from the Pride event. There was one building after another. The proud and useful turned pitiful and useless. The broken brown buildings, a complete contrast to the rainbow flags and the beating of the drums just 2 blocks away. Outside of London, I don't think I've ever seen as much graffiti. Not a millimetre was uncovered. The Harfield Inn here, looking very eerie. This walk was when I was en route to Hillsborough Stadium, and further down the river from here, I found myself in the middle of this huge traveller's site. I didn't take my camera out, but let me tell you, there must have been 200 caravans on the bank of the river. I felt like I was running a gauntlet as an outsider, but I came out the other end with nobody saying anything to me. This is Regent's Court. It's one of the many large apartment buildings in Sheffield. This one was built in the 1930s. If someone's lost a wig, it's here on the traffic light. This is the Hillsborough area of Sheffield. Sheffield is a bit like a city made up of many different villages, I was finding out. It's also quite hilly, which I was also finding out walking in this area, aptly called Walkley. These are the Botanic Gardens. Sheffield is known as the greenest city in Europe, but I think they might cheat a little bit with that by including a chunk of the Peak District within the city limits. So we've seen some urban decay in Sheffield, but let's take you to the worst place with the worst reputation in Sheffield. I was headed to Page Hall via Pitmore, and it didn't take me long to find fly tipping and filth discarded by the side of the road. A pub closed down here and the off-licence, the only shop on the street open across the road. A sign of the times, I guess. Garbage everywhere. If I showed you every mound of rubbish and every appliance or bit of furniture fly tipped, the video would be 4 hours long. Instead, I'll show you some of the more random stuff, and some probably a bit gruesome. A bit like this coming up, the dead magpie next to the sofa. A no fly tipping sign that's been fly tipped. Even the school has to put a no fly tipping sign up. Kindness, determination, respect, opportunity, achievement and togetherness. Not values that are consistent with the shite left everywhere. A dead rat coming up. Yeah, this is all just outside of people's houses. I saw people sat outside on their doorsteps doing nothing, just whiling away the time. Children playing amongst the filth. I felt like saying, pick up a brush. It staggers me that people can actually live like this. The area is mostly populated by Roma from Slovakia and Pakistanis. From what I can tell, the two communities do not get on at all, and it's the Roma that are responsible for most of the trash and the delinquency. At one point, I saw 5 big lads get out of a pristine Mercedes and then throw trash on the floor. This might be different cultural values or whatever, but it's disgusting. Letting children run around in rubbish, which is a breeding ground for rats, is disgusting. Page Hall is probably the most disgusting neighbourhood I have seen in the UK. It's nothing new either. If you type Page Hall Sheffield into Google, you'll see articles on Roma gangs fighting, people living in poverty, human trafficking, etc, etc. When is something going to get done about this place? And look at the name of this off licence. Why not here? Well, take a fucking good look around you. I also couldn't believe the audacity of this sign. Proud of Page Hall. The only way you could get some pride back in the place is to bomb the shit out of it and start again. What an absolute toilet. But if you take Page Hall out of the equation, I really like Sheffield. I could actually see myself living there. I could rent a flat above a shop, cut my hair and get a job, smoke some fags and play some pool, pretend I never went to school. I wouldn't need to pretend too hard, I'm struggling YouTuber, but on to the next destination. Number 16, Huddersfield, or Udders, as some of the locals know it. Huddersfield has a spectacular entrance when you arrive from its spectacular railway station. I did hear that this was as good as it got here though. The town of former Prime Minister Harold Wilson is an ex-textile making town of about 170,000, only 12 miles away from Leeds. Huddersfield's been a market town for over a millennium, but it was during the Industrial Revolution when the town became wealthy. So, what's Huddersfield like in 2025? The market is only open for 4 days a week, and when I was there, it wasn't one of those days. So why do they call it the open market, eh? If you're an architecture buff, particularly Victorian architecture, you would like Huddersfield. This window display seemed to be hiding a difficult truth. Huddersfield doesn't have an especially high crime rate, nor does it have a high unemployment rate. I was here because I'd read about there being issues with neglect and the town centre deteriorating, but honestly, is there anywhere that doesn't describe these days? Well, perhaps Barnsley, but you know. This is Beast Market, where people come to trade their beasts at the Hollywood Karaoke Music Club. And this seems a bit risky, putting Capone's next to the Sopranos. And here we are again with some nice architecture being put opposite some 60s, 70s, grim, imposing structures. This building's Crown House. It's been derelict since 2022 and it'll be student flats at some point in the future. There are newer buildings, mostly part of the university. The Huddersfield Giants rugby league team share the ACU Stadium with Huddersfield Town AFC. The Giants have won the English League 7 times and Town have won the league 3 times, all consecutively in 1924, 25 and 26. Nice teeth, by the way. Huddersfield Town now play in League 1, the 3rd tier of English football. Back in the town centre, and the uni building has just a little touch of the Soviet about it. Like the centre of Sheffield, it's a mix of older buildings and modern student ones, only with less derelict buildings than Sheffield. Oops, maybe I spoke too soon. Get on it, mush. This is without doubt the most underwhelming temple I've ever seen. A nice bit of brutalism for you. A free bus takes you all around town. That's something they do in a few towns in Yorkshire. A couple of shopping centres here in Hudders. The Light, which seemed okay. Piazza, which was dead. They called this area the Shambles, and bloody right, it was a shambles. These buildings here, they're nice, even if I didn't know what they were or for what purpose they served. And this is straight out of the Soviet propaganda books, this mosaic. I don't think they'd have appreciated the bookies underneath though in the old USSR. Now if you took this image in isolation and you hadn't seen it before, would you think it was A, Yorkshire, B, Volgograd, or see somewhere else? Let me know in the comments. Another nice build. Poor Wilco. Yikes, what is going on with these Soviet vibes? The town centre was generally quite busy. There wasn't too much of this, like boarded up shops. This arcade was pretty uninspiring. And check this out, the bus station, a darn sight uglier than the railway station. So Huddersfield's not a bad place. It's not somewhere that I'd rush back to, but I think if you live there or in the surrounding areas, well, there's a lot worse places to be. Number 15, Halifax. I feared the worst when I touched down in Halifax. The area around the bus station was as run down as any that I'd seen in the UK. Dark, dangerous, derelict buildings, wide open in the town centre. This used to be the offices of Timeform, who I think had a magazine and they used to rate odds on horses. But they moved out of the building in 2021. As of August 2025, it's still derelict. I think some companies are trying to buy it and are going to part demolish it, but the council are faffing about. It's an absolute eyesore. It's right there in the town centre. You can see it. Let me see, just across the road, for example, from this bomb site is the cinema, and there's restaurants and all that kind of thing. And this sign give me another warm welcome to Halifax. It's been a good start. This is the town hall, which seemed suitably grand, but whilst the town hall looked like it had been built in the 1880s, the Acapulco Club and the gourmet restaurant looked positively 1980s. Quite a few closed down shops at this end of town. Really, the town centre was a mixture of grand buildings with crap facades and crap buildings with crap facades. No sniggering at the back, you juveniles. There are cultural attractions in Halifax, like the theatre, where Ryan Giggs will be making an after dinner speech. Halifax, lock up your sisters-in-law. The name Halifax is probably better known nowadays for the bank to which the town gave its name. And here is their absolute behemoth of a head office. A quick fun fact for you about Halifax: William Herschel of Halifax was the man that discovered Uranus. Halifax is the first place I've seen with 3 pizzas alongside each other. We've got Pizza Hut, Pizza Chicken and Domino's. Here in the Westgate Arcade, it was a little bit more sophisticated. Here in the Albany Arcade, a bit more down to earth. If you ask me though, the best thing about this West Yorkshire town of around 90,000 people, no, it wasn't the old cock. It was the Peace Hall, a Grade 1 listed building that was originally used for weavers to sell the wool that they produced locally. It's been in use since 1779, since 1868 as a market hall, and then in 1971 it became a tourist attraction. It's recently had a restoration and reopened in 2017. Outside the Peace Hall, there's the imposing Calderdale Industrial Museum, next to Burger King, of course. The Halifax Minster is also impressive in a darkly Gothic way. and the old textile mills have been repurposed here. Halifax does have some issues with homelessness, as you can see there, and crime. I saw a fair few cans of industrial strength beer being smashed back in the centre. Here we go, viaducts and mills as Yorkshire as puddings and gravy. Overall, I liked Halifax. I'll definitely be going back there in the future. Now I've just got to find my way out of here. Number 14, Cleckheaton. I'd like to apologise to you, my viewers, for including Cleckheaton. Not necessarily because it doesn't deserve to be here, but, well, let's just say there's nothing to say about it, really. It's a town of 17,000 that was once the wool carding capital of the world. If you don't know what wool carding is, don't worry, you're not alone. I had to look it up. It's basically cleaning and processing the wool so it's ready to go out to market. The only reason then that Cleckheaton is on this list is because a friend of mine, who shall go nameless, drove past it a few times and said it was a dump. Well, it's certainly not a dump, but it's not a particularly interesting place either. There's a shopping centre and a market hall, and the Wetherspoons opposite the town hall that seems to be the focal point of everything going on. There's no railway station, as that was taken away by Dr. Beeching, so it's only a bus stop now. The market was dead quiet around this time. It's about 4 o'clock when I arrived. I was quite surprised to see this kiosk called Smoker's Corner, and then the pub around the corner advertising breakfast and a pint for £8.95. It's not often you see smoking and early morning drinking actively encouraged in this way. So one thing you can't accuse Cleckheaton of being is woke. The town centre is, shall we say, unpretentious. Bradford and Leeds are close enough to go if you want to do a proper shop. There weren't many people about at all, but the roads were busy. Cleckheaton Carpets here shows that the wool trade, albeit quite small, still exists in Cleckheaton. As previously stated, the railway station has been closed, but nearby you can visit the brilliantly named Man Dam Viaduct over the River Spen. So Cleckheaton then, crime rates are slightly worse than average for the area. Nothing much goes on. That's Cleckheaton. Can it get any more boring than that? We'll see. Number 13, Normanton. Normanton. Normanton, the normalist, normal town going. I'd read somewhere that this small town, part of the borough of Wakefield, was depressing, ugly and bleak. And it wasn't that bad at all. I arrived early in the morning. There was not much going on. Only about 21,000 people live here. Normanton has a high crime rate, and from what I'd read online, this is where most of the action goes on, the Smurthwaite estate. As it was 8 o'clock in the morning, there was unsurprisingly no actual action going down. A little bit of litter was about as exciting as it got. I went back into the town. There's nothing untoward apart from a few potholes and this amazing greenhouse here on the right hand side. I even went around rooting in the alleyways looking for some content, but this is as good as it got. A bit of litter and some crappy graffiti. Here in the high street we saw some trash bags lying around, but they soon got picked up by the road sweepers. Normanton is an ex-mining town, you won't be surprised to hear, and nowadays it serves as a commuter town for Leeds. Comments online about Normanton are conflicting. Some say it's rougher than sandpaper on your scrotum, others say it's pleasant. The only way to find out, I think, would be to go out in Normanton on a Friday or a Saturday evening, but I'm afraid my budget, as well as my desire to see the real Normanton, don't quite stretch that far. The hairdresser name, Choppy Toffs, was about as amused as I've been all morning. The well-loved shop had a display of mannequins and some brightly coloured clothes. Normanton is it's just a bland town. It doesn't really evoke any emotion. It reminds me of the old Twix advert. Norm's the name, sensible's the game. It was about time to leave. Number 12, and still in the borough of Wakefield, it's the city of Wakefield. The greatest little city on earth, according to late local hardman and nutcase Paul Sykes, although he did say in the same interview that he punched a shark in the earhole and it swam off, so I'm not sure he's a trustworthy source. Anyway, in my pre-ranker days, I used to actually live in Wakefield, this city of 110,000, just 9 miles from Leeds, so it's going to be difficult to be objective in this appraisal of the city, but I'll try my best. And before anyone says it, no, it wasn't the prison that I lived in. So the nostalgia started early with this VHS rental shop. I was headed up towards the town hall area, which, despite the boarded up shops along the way, was just as nice as I remembered it. Oh, and look, it's our favourite monarch again. So all this architecture was built in the Victorian period, of course, so I do wonder to myself, did the Victorians know at the time that their architecture would still be the best around 150 years later? All this part was brand new to me, all very brown and lime green. Wakefield has 2 railway stations. The main one is Westgate, and then there's a more regional one, Kirkgate. The M1 is nearby, and there's a bus station and a free bus to take you around the city with information that's almost 10 years old but still relevant. As you can see, there's loads to do around Wakey. There's theatres, comedy clubs, loads of boozers, and I can tell you from first-hand experience there's a cracking night out. Well, it was 20 years ago when I lived here anyway. Maybe some more up-to-date locals can let me know in the comments what it's like today. And like Barnsley, Wakefield has a Latino area to it. Cafe Noir, Mex Bar, Havana, and a little plastic palm tree. Clearly, the locals think this place is ace. The old picture house, after being a cinema, became Casanova's, Rooftop Gardens, Jumping Jacks, Mustang Sally's, Mustangs, Icon, Quest and Kooky, and is now called Nocturno. A lot of the city has been regenerated, which we'll see shortly, and a lot of it has deteriorated since the 80s. Wakefield Cathedral was built in the early 15th century. That one was neglected and then demolished, and another one was built in the 18th century on the same site. This bizarre and quite creepy looking sculpture is apparently an Amazon love god. It looks like he's presenting this pair of angels in a pretty sinister kind of way. Riding Shopping Centre was opened in 1983 and was the first of its kind in the country to follow the American mall style with incorporated food court and multi-storey car park. It's now way past its peak. The lower mall of the Riding Shopping Centre is having a complete revamp. Ostensibly, the shops are still open. The reality, though, paints a different picture. Trinity Walk is the new shopping centre. It's open plan, modern, pretty sleek to be fair, and it's also got its own fair share of weird sculptures. Outside of the shopping centre, Wakey is just like anywhere else really, the usual pound shops and vape shops and all that kind of thing. This street is called Kirkgate. This is still in the city centre, and it is just a bunch of rundown shops, fast food junk, boarded up stores. It's the place to avoid really in Wakefield. The railway station at Kirkgate was voted the worst in the country at one point, but since then it's had a facelift. It's just another British street that's been forgotten about. People don't need to go there anymore, so councils can just get away with letting it rot. This is the West Yorkshire History Centre, proudly boasting that 2024 is Wakefield's year. This was filmed in July 2025. and it wouldn't be Wakey without some odd sculptures. Down by the River Calder, Barbara Hepworth, famous sculptor from Wakefield, has a star on the Wakefield Walk of Fame. There are other folk with stars, but I hadn't heard of any of them. The only other person I've heard of from Wakey, in fact, is the actress Julie Hesmondhalgh, who played Hayley Cropper, Roy's transgender wife in Coronation Street. Anyway, this is the way to the Hepworth Museum, and wow, what's this? This is even creepier than the Amazon Love God. Have a look at this. Anyway, the Hepworth. It's 12 quid to get in for adults. This is another one of those post-industrial sort of hipster areas called Rutland Mills. Damn. Some of the old buildings are just about clinging on. Outside the centre, and we've got viaducts and we've got tunnels. Bin misuse, well, that's a new one on me. Rubbish on the floor, bit of fly tipping, all that usual kind of thing. It's kind of sad that I've become completely desensitised to this, to be honest. Some boarded up houses. This is Wakefield Trinity Wildcats Rugby League Club, one of the oldest clubs in England. They recently won the second tier and now play in the Super League. At the time of recording, they sit in mid-table. A bit of useless trivia for you. Wakefield is the largest city in England that doesn't have a professional football team. Right, on to the next place.
I don't know him. I know him today. Look at the voice.
Good voice, sir.
Wow! I'm a 51 years old. I like Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple. You know what I mean? Him. Wow! Wow, man. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Sorry. You know, sunshine when she's gone. The voice. Wow! What is possible, man? What is possible? Wow! Wow! I'm like that. I'm from Portugal. What is good, what bad. And on sunshine when she's gone. Oh, rubbish. Wow. You love this house, just ain't no home. Every time she goes. Whoa. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Welcome to Bridlington. Well, that was my welcome anyway. Almost as soon as I stepped off the bus, a pissed up Portuguese bloke wasn't what I was expecting at 11 AM on a Friday, but I'm not complaining, it made for good content. After making myself look like a weirdo for filming pies and pastries again, and subsequently having to buy a corned beef hash pie to make myself look less weird, I went up to check out the Bridlington Old Town. And what a splendid old town it is. Georgian buildings, vintage independent shops, and a very relaxed atmosphere. It felt more like strolling through an old village than being in a seaside resort. Another good thing was that I was seemingly the only person there that was under 60. It was the youngest that I'd felt in months. I walked back to the main town through the residential areas, and for the most part they seemed okay. Of course there's the odd numpty who doesn't know how to use a bin. Bridlington is out on the east coast, north of Hull and south of Scarborough, about 35 miles east of York. Costa del Brid Luxury Apartments. Recently, Bridlington has been voted the worst seaside resort in Britain, but spoiler alert, it really isn't. Okay, sure, it doesn't have the cosmopolitan flair of Saint-Tropez, the pizzazz of Portofino, the booming surf of Bondi Beach, or the sexy senoritas of Santa Ponsa. But it does have some smelly balls in the Polish market. There's a few hotels out of business now, but most seem to be doing okay. There's a 2-mile long promenade, and if you don't fancy walking it, you can take the train. The beach is mostly sandy, with a few pebbles and shells, and obviously it's the North Sea, so the water's a bit on the chilly side. After Blackpool, Bridlington has the second most arcades in the whole country, and it's also known as the lobster capital of Europe. It's port bringing in over 300 tonnes of lobster annually. That's more than any other port on the continent. The harbour and the wharf here have been in use for over 200 years. On this building here, it's hard to tell where the white paint finished and the seagull gunk started. And who needs the Wendy's American franchise when we've got our own homegrown version? Bridlington only has a population of about 38,000, so there's only the 2 tower blocks like this one. My good friends over at Generation Explorers rated Bridlington over Scarborough, but for me, I can't agree with that, mainly because of the dilapidated town centre, and I much prefer the beach in Scarborough. Sorry guys. Having said that, it's a long way from being the worst seaside resort in Britain. Well, that's about it then for this video. Okay, you don't need to sound that happy about it, mate. As I said, that's it for part 1. Thank you very much for watching me rank. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up. If not, give it a thumbs down. And if you don't want to miss part 2 or any future videos, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification. Part 2, it gets seriously crazy.